Order. 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 Baggy-Shanker to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered town and city centre safety. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Mr Dowd. I want to begin by declaring my interest as both a city councillor in Derby and former council leader, but most importantly as a proud Derby-born resident since 1972. Yes, the year we won the league. And in Derby, like our towns and cities up and down the country, there is so much to be proud of. We have a community that rolls up its sleeves and cracks on. From Alveston to Sinfin, our Derby Parks volunteers are out, come rain or shine, working to keep our parks looking their best. And just before Christmas, volunteers from across the city, from the Salvation Army, the Pakistani Community Centre, the Gurdwaras, pulled together to support 200 pear tree families who were evacuated from their homes. It's these sort of examples of community and many more that make us proud to call our city home. And that city is brimming with what it has to offer our residents and visitors. Grab a pint at the Hairy Dog, head on to our gig at the Valiant Live, which opened its doors last year. You'll see that it is buzzing. And there's an exciting future ahead with regeneration efforts breathing new life into the cultural heart of our city. Demolishing the assembly rooms, which couldn't happen a second sooner in my view, will completely transform our marketplace, creating a multi-purpose community venue, a 4-star hotel and Grade A office space for the fantastic businesses across our city. And that's not all. From the redevelopment of the derelict Friargate goods yard to the Guildhall Theatre, regeneration is full steam ahead, and we are committed to creating positive change in our city, which our community can feel.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Yes, absolutely.
My honourable friend is brilliantly setting out some of the regeneration that we are seeing in our city, from the new performance venue, Valiant Live, the redevelopment of the Friargate goods yard, to the £20 million that this government is investing in the Guildhall and Derby Theatre, regeneration that he played a central part in as both as council leader and now as MP. And he is absolutely right that the long-awaited demolition of the assembly rooms and the regeneration of that site will be transformational for our marketplace, the icing on the Bird's Bakery cake. But would my honourable friend agree that people will only go into the city centre and enjoy this regeneration if they feel safe to do so? And does he agree that more bobbies on the beat and further investment in our CCTV issues that we've both been working on are essential so that everyone feels safe to live, work and play in our city?
Order. Order. Can I just remind members, we have about 20-odd people who wish to speak. That means maximum everyone's going to get is about 2 minutes, so I might as well as give everybody the heads up on that one. So if there are going to be interventions, as I've said in the past, can there be a sketch, not an oil painting, please? Thank you very much. Baggy-Shanker.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend and my fantastic MP, by the way, for her intervention. And she's absolutely right. It's a partnership between investment, but people need to feel safe in our city centre. As a constituent of mine, John told me, we can see how much effort and investment is being put into our city, from building housing and breathing new life into shops and spaces in our city centre. I want every single resident and visitor to be able to take their family out for a day, meet up with friends and enjoy the city centre has to offer. But we know that the long-term success of regeneration depends on the community feeling safe and enjoying our city centre. Because as John told me, he has real concerns about the safety of his family when they're out and about in Derby. Seeing drug users loitering on St Peter's Street and on paths by the River Derwent has put him off popping to shops, and it stopped his wife from going out running in our city centre altogether.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
My honourable friend makes the point about people feeling safe in their communities, and I know one of the issues that many of us hear from our constituents about is the issue about illegal e-bikes speeding through our parks and town centres. Now, I know that many reputable dealers like Bike 7 and Palace Cycles in my Carlisle constituency would never sell an illegal e-bike, but we do know they're widely available. Does he agree with me that the time has come to ban the sale of illegal e-bikes and cut this problem off at source?
I'd like again to thank my friend for her intervention there, and I think it's really simple. If they're illegal, they should be illegal and they should be banned. Unfortunately, John and his family aren't alone. I hear these concerns reflected during my surgeries and my inbox time and time again. Families like John tell me that they're worried about drug and alcohol abuse that they see on our streets. Yes, sure.
Honourable friend for giving way. In my constituency of Wolverhampton West, we have the Safer Wolverhampton Partnership, which works together with key holders such as the council, police, healthcare, housing and education providers. And we also have the Way Youth Zone, which provides support, stability and safe place for young people to go. Does my honourable friend agree that we need to adopt a coordinated and holistic approach to addressing city centre safety with appropriate funding, such as providing sufficient funding for our youth services?
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his intervention. It's absolutely critical we have the right funding and the sense of partnership working to be able to tackle this problem together. Young people often tell me they want to take everything our wonderful city centre has to offer, but knife crime and the perception of knife crime makes them worried about the safety when they're out and about in our city. Constituents like Tirith tell me the lack of visible policing heightens their concern. They feel unsafe in our city centre. Yes, sure.
Thank the honourable gentleman. Neighbourhood policing teams are clearly essential to ensuring that feeling of safety on our high streets and our town centres. I hope he'd join me in commending my local team led by Inspector Tanny Ditter, who leads for Bingley, Shipley and Baildon. And does he agree with me that the government's investment in 3,000 more neighbourhood police and PCSOs is essential to make people feel safe in our town centres and help our high streets thrive?
I'd again like to thank my friend for her intervention and congratulate Inspector Ditter and all the work you do to help your local police, coupled with the additional investment from government in our police force, which will only help. No member in here today, today's debate will want to talk down their city centres, and I'm particularly not here to talk down Derby. But like our constituents, we are proud of the places we all represent. But up and down the country, years and years of Tory austerity and mismanagement has eroded that pride. Austerity took bobbies off the beat and it took bobbies out of our city centres, with PCSO numbers halved and an estimated 600 police stations shutting their doors for good. It left our high streets boarded up with shops closing at a rate of 37 a day in 2024. And it let retail crime run rampant, leaving shoplifting at its highest level since records began, and hard-working staff worried about the safety at work. The co-op campaign to protect retail workers shows that, shockingly, there are over 1,300 incidents of violence and abuse happening every single day, with shop workers threatened just for doing their job. We know that the catastrophic austerity experiment left our community feeling less safe than ever. University of Southampton research demonstrates that austerity led to a 3.7% increase in total crime and a 4.8% increase in violent crime, with these increases hitting deprived neighbourhoods the hardest. And in Derby, we have seen that play out in the streets and places that we love. Your pride for your city is stretched when the high street is littered with empty or just plain dodgy shops. In 2024, Derbyshire Live estimated that more than 80 shops in our city centre were for sale or to let. That's an increase of about 60% on the last 2 years. And your sense of safety is shaken when last summer residents watched masked thieves smash their way into a pawnbroker's shop on St Peter's Street in broad daylight. Sure.
He's making an excellent speech about a very important issue to many of us here in the chamber, I'm sure. On that point about masked thieves, councils do have the powers under PSPO to ban face coverings, particularly in town centres. Does he agree with me councils should work with the police to do this where it's appropriate? And is he as shocked as I am that Hillingdon Council are refusing to ban face coverings in the town centre, despite the community and the police asking for it for exactly the sorts of reasons he mentions?
Thank you for that intervention. And he raises a valid point. And again, I think the police needs to be working with local authorities to tackle these issues in a sensitive way.
Before we move on, give way.
Yes, sure.
Thank you. I don't want to interrupt his flow any more. I thank him for giving way. He mentions dodgy shops, and he'll know that I've been running a campaign against dodgy vape shops and others on the high street. The issue of safety is so important. These shops that are selling goods to young people absolutely erodes confidence in the high street. Does he agree that there needs to be more done to give powers to commercial landlords to understand exactly who they're renting to be able to shut these shops down?
Yeah. I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. Again, she's absolutely right. These shops do not help other businesses, they do not help the residents, and they do not create that safe environment for our city centres, and more measures are needed to be able to help tackle that. Last year, again, marked a really difficult day for our city, and an utterly devastating one for his family, when Govinder Singh Johar, also known as Danny, was tragically murdered going about his business in a Lloyds bank on a Tuesday afternoon. When crimes like these happen in plain sight and in places which we use regularly and consider to be safe, it's not surprising that public confidence is shaken. Communities are left wondering whether their towns and cities they know and love are really the places they see in front of them. Because when we talk about public safety, we're not only talking about law enforcement, but as my constituent Tirith puts it, we're also talking about how we can preserve the character of the places we call home. I know that whether it's Stoke-on-Trent or Somerset, that's the same feeling will be echoed up and down the country by constituents in every town and city. So today we're here because we want to take the concerns of our constituents seriously. We're here because when they tell us more needs to be done for them to feel like crime is being taken seriously and tackled, we want to listen. And most importantly, we're here because although austerity damaged our towns and city, it did not break them. We want to crack on and make changes so that everyone can enjoy our town and city centres as the brilliant and buzzing places we know they can be. Which is why I want to turn to talk about what comes next. Because we know that keeping our communities safe isn't about warm words, it's about action. That means working hand in hand with the police, our partners, to ensure that our towns and cities are places where people feel welcome and secure to spend time. Okay, sure.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. I've recently completed a Shop Local survey of almost 4,500 residents where they've said that they believe a cleaner high street would bring more pride from the community in their own high streets and help reduce crime. Does he agree with me? This is a good initial approach for that, but it doesn't replace police on the beat.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. Yes, again, absolutely right. You know, a clean, vibrant, buzzing city centre with organisations working in partnership with the police. It's everyone's responsibility. At home in Derby, I've worked to drive practical action on crime and antisocial behaviour in our city. I've teamed up with local partners and my friend and neighbour, the Honourable Member for Derby North, to hold regular city centre summits. From Safe and Sound to Derbyshire Constabulary and the Derby City Youth Alliance, I want to pay tribute to the organisations who have got round the table with us. The work they do day to day to keep our city centre supported and as a place which our community can enjoy is absolutely vital. There is still so much more to do, but I know that when we are taking steps in the right direction, I hear regularly from constituents that when police aren't visible, they feel more worried and about their safety in the city centre. So on a recent walkabout with local police, I was pleased to see firsthand how work to recruit and deploy more police officers and public protection officers is helping residents to feel safe and supported when they're out and about in Derby. But we also know that action at a local level needs backing. It needs backing with investment, backing with resources, and backing with the visible, responsive police presence that our communities want to see.
Way, because in Epsom I'm pleased that the nighttime economy is on the rise, and whilst I haven't sampled the new Labyrinth nightclub, I have been to many restaurants and pubs and with local residents, and a thriving nighttime economy helps contribute to our high streets, but as you mentioned, they also must be safe. So does my honourable friend agree with me that even at night time as well, a visible trusted police presence really is a deterrent to crime?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no time where the police presence shouldn't be there. It should be there during the day and during the evening and nighttime hours as well. And that's why last year I was absolutely chuffed to see the Chancellor back Team Derby. Team Derby will bring everyone who has a stake in our city's future together to make sure that every pound of investment coming into Derby delivers the real change our community can see. And that is why I wholeheartedly welcome the Labour government's commitment to keeping our streets safe for everyone to enjoy. Whether it's freeing up local officers to deliver neighbourhood policing in their communities, making sure that when residents report concerns to 999, they can be confident about the response they'll get, or putting bobbies back on the beat. It's vital that we crack on with the job today and tomorrow and every single day. Because wherever we call home, it's a basic expectation that we can step out of our front doors, pop to local shops and feel safe. I urge the Minister to back the reform with investment and resources our local police forces need, so that in Derby and across the country, our communities can have the confidence to enjoy everything their towns and cities has to offer them. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's okay. You can sit. Just sit down for a moment. I remind members that should they wish to bob, if they wish to be called in the debate, do so, please. The question is that this House is considered town and city centre. Iqbal Mohammed.
Mr Dowd, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship.
2 minutes, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry for interfering. Just 2 minutes, please. 2 minutes for everybody at this stage.
Thank you. And I congratulate my honourable friend for securing this important debate and for his introductory speech. Across the country, there is a growing disconnect between the official statistics on serious crime and the lived experience of our communities. While some categories of serious violence have declined, many people feel less safe than ever in our town and city centres. That perception is not irrational. It reflects the rise of highly visible, everyday crimes that fundamentally shape how people experience public spaces. Antisocial behaviour, phone snatching and shoplifting have become rife on our streets. These offences may not always dominate national headlines, but they corrode public confidence in the police and undermine the social fabric of our communities. In Dewsbury and Batley, these trends are painfully visible. Just weeks ago, a gang knife attack in Dewsbury town left one man seriously injured in broad daylight. Days later, police seized £600,000 worth of cannabis from a drugs farm factory operating in the town centre itself. I will give way.
Friend for giving way. And appreciate that this is a slightly different issue. But in terms of our empty properties on high streets and absent landlords that aren't contributing to our communities, what we've seen in Stafford is crime taking place in these buildings and an inability of local authorities to have the powers they need to take them back from absentee landlords. Would my honourable friend agree with me that that's something the government needs to press heavily to help us get our town centres back into active use?
Here.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I do agree that empty shops and empty buildings in town centres is a draw for nefarious activities and people squatting or and committing crimes from those places, and I do encourage and request the government to look at that. I know that the recent announcements of business rate cuts will help certain businesses, but I think that should be extended across all town centre businesses. On Sunday, thieves brazenly stole the 129-year-old mayoral chains from Dewsbury town centre, climbing in through the roof. Constituents tell me they no longer feel safe shopping or even leaving their homes after dark. These are not abstract statistics, they are lived realities that have major ramifications for an individual's quality of life. The decline of visible neighbourhood policing and the hollowing out of council services and youth centres have played a significant role in this deplorable state of affairs. These changes were not inexorable certainties, but a conscious political programme of austerity. That is why I welcome the government's renewed emphasis on neighbourhood policing, including dedicated antisocial behaviour leads and guaranteed patrols in towns. In Dewsbury, we have seen the emergence of a new town centre team. These initiatives matter. Visibilities matter. Nationally, the challenge is stark. Shoplifting is at record levels. Phone snatching rose by 153% in a single year. Abuse of retail workers is escalating. The crime and policing bill The crime and policing bill contains some welcome measures, but legislation alone will not rebuild public confidence. Town centre safety requires a holistic approach. Policing, youth services, urban design, transport, economic regeneration, and more must work together. Ultimately, crime is not just a threat to security, but to democratic trust itself. Safer town centres are not just a policing objective, they are a democratic necessity. If we want people to believe in our towns and in our institutions and in our democracy, we must start by ensuring that they feel safe on our streets. Thank you.
Will German.
To serve under your chairship, and thank you to my honourable friend, the Member for Derby South, for securing this debate. Improving community safety in Clwyd North is one of my top priorities, and it's been great to work alongside North Wales Police through meetings and walkabouts on this, and also to have the opportunity to talk directly to retail workers and residents out and about in the town centre. I've seen for myself how antisocial behaviour is being tackled through better community cohesion. Local PCSOs and shopkeepers are connected by radio in our town centres, staying in regular contact so they can quickly share information about what's happening on the street and step in, crucially, when issues arise. And it's this kind of everyday cooperation that is really making a difference, deterring antisocial behaviour before it escalates, reassuring residents and businesses with a visible presence and a sense of order and safety, which is so important. And that really matters because it shows people that antisocial behaviour won't be tolerated and that our communities and crucially our high streets belong to the law-abiding majority. We've got more PCSOs in every Clwyd North neighbourhood with a named officer there. We've got local initiatives, Operation Restore, Operation Vroom, to tackle violent offences and antisocial behaviour, and persistent nuisance behaviour like e-bikes and disruption on our streets. And in short, I can see firsthand from being out and about in Clwyd North that government-backed initiatives are being backed up by local police confidence to really tackle these issues. More PCSOs in our neighbourhoods, safer streets, stronger local communities and a real difference so people can feel secure.
Thank you. Jim Shannon.
Chairman, a pleasure to serve on your chairship, and a big thank you to the Honourable Member for Derby South for the debate and thereby giving us all a chance to participate. I wish to give a Northern Ireland perspective to town and city centre safety. Northern Ireland has several specific government-led and multi-agency initiatives designed to improve safety in towns and city centres. They're often coordinated through local partnerships, such as the PCSP, Police and Community Safety Partnership. However, as with most departments, lack of funding in Northern Ireland has greatly hampered the progress and safety that can be made. To give a quick example, CCTV, the sleeping policeman, I call it, in Newton Ards and Bangor, is simply not fit for purpose. They've upgraded the screen and film is very grainy, and therefore it's always hard to ascertain who they are. The local PSNI chief Superintendent is crying out for a system that can be used as evidence for crimes that have taken place, but more importantly, which can prevent crimes. The local PS have acknowledged that the need, and yet the council hands are ostensibly tied during the having to struck the local rate. We then go up the ladder to the Minister for Justice. Very happy to give way.
thank the honourable member for giving way. Would you agree with me that we have the potential for win-win here, in that many people are complaining about high street shops being derelict and empty, and if we can encourage more businesses and more people to have living either adjacent to or above retail units, we can increase footfall and protect people, provided that police are present, particularly in the evening time.
I can thank my honourable friend for that there, and I wish to come on to it's not just about the CCTV in the city centre, Mr Chairman, it's about CCTV in the shops as well. And while the Minister for Justice and the Department have highlighted that their funding does not stretch, how I could argue that the Minister in particular doesn't prioritise the way that I would like this to be spent, and then thereby change the facts. The PSNI have indicated that they got a system that they would man it. In other words, if the system's in place, the PSNI will look after it. So there's an advantage for doing that. One quick story, and I'm going to be very conscious of time because I want to give others the chance to participate. My son worked in a shop in Newton. It doesn't work there anymore. But one night a guy came to rob the till and steal some drink. And they threatened him with a knife, and he stepped back the right thing to do. No sense of being a hero when it comes to some maniac with a knife. But the CCTV they had in the shop was the reason why they were evidentially able to catch up. So it's just not about the CCTV in the streets. It's about the CCTV in the constituency shops as well. The rate in Newton Ards is 33.6 crimes per 1,000 people, as 36 elsewhere. But could I ask this? PSNI forced them and find themselves going from business to business to ask for their camera evidence, and even asking the residents for Ring doorbell footage, another way of catching those who are up to no good. I think that's something that we need to focus on. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. In my constituency of North Somerset and our amazing town centres, safety is an issue raised consistently by residents, and their concerns reflect a wider truth about communities across our country. Homicide rates in England and Wales have fallen to their lowest levels since records began, which is welcome news. Yet this is not how people in my community and across the UK feel, because we have less violent crime. It is the small crimes that tear the fabric of our community spirit that are on the rise. Having spent nearly 2 decades working in pharmacy, I know firsthand, right, that you can be in a local shop watching somebody sweep a shelf of products into their bag and walk away almost undeterred, driving a feeling of lawlessness, making us feel like antisocial behaviour and crime rates are increasing because low-level, everyday issues are more prevalent and more visible. Shop floor staff are often told not to put themselves at risk, rightfully so, as I still have a scar on the back of my hand from a shoplifter. And public are afraid to get involved as they will likely be on the wrong side of the law. It is the antisocial behaviour, the petty shoplifting, the lack of police presence and even the proliferation of e-bikes tearing through our street that is driving this feeling of unsafe towns and villages. Add in this absence of CCTV coverage and police presence in key areas and residents feel like they have nowhere to turn. For example, the Portishead Post Office, one of the largest towns in my constituency and a vital hub for that Portishead residents and I campaigned tirelessly for, suffered 2 break-ins. One only a month after opening its doors in May of last year. And even next door, in the village of Pill, where I live, I've been seeing a rise in antisocial behaviour from bikes tearing up football pitches, even affecting a match. That is why I welcome this government's bill and the Safer Streets mission that sets out clear priorities on neighbourhood policing and town centre crime. But part of this conversation should be about the fundamental changes we've seen on our high streets, not with nostalgia, but what we need our high streets to look like for the future.
Thank you very much. Peter Fortune.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I want to thank the honourable member for Derby South for securing this important debate. The government promised to strengthen neighbourhood policing, and we have heard many well-intentioned but sadly empty words from members of the government benches, as their actions in London fall far short of the mark. Nowhere did they tell Londoners during the mayoral or general elections that they would cut 260 million from London's police service, and yet that is exactly what they are doing. Bromley may be one of the safest boroughs in London, but our town centres and villages still face acute policing challenges, from antisocial behaviour and shoplifting to car theft and burglary. We are simply not receiving the policing resources our community needs to tackle these issues. And that, taken together with the £22 million funding cut for Bromley Council, My constituents in Bromley and Biggin Hill are being unfairly punished by this callous government. As part of Mayor Khan's sweeping cuts to the Metropolitan Police, he's closing all but 2 of the 24-hour police counters across London. In doing so, he's breaking his manifesto promise to retain at least 1 24-hour front counter in each borough, just as, incidentally, he's breaking his promise to protect the Greenbelt. And Bromley, despite being a major town centre with a busy nightlife, is one of those areas set to lose its round-the-clock police station service. On the evening of the 23rd of March, lights will be turned off at Bromley's police station. It will be a huge blow for public safety, further undermining confidence in the Met and hindering our brave police officers from what they do best, which is keeping our people safe. Regardless of the outcome of any changes, I will keep fighting this all the way. If we don't stand up and say enough is enough, Sadiq Khan will break more manifesto promises and come back for even bigger cuts to policing in Bromley. It's clear that our town and city centres are not safe under Labour.
Thank you. Graham Downey.
Last Friday, I hosted a roundtable with local businesses, creative organisations and city centre groups in Dunfermline to discuss the safety of the town centre and how we can make Dunfermline a prosperous city in the future. And what struck me was the unanimity of experience. People love their city, they are committed to its future, but they feel that too much of the burden of improvement is falling on them rather than being supported by different levels of government. Those at the roundtable spoke about day-to-day frustrations that shape how safe a city feels. Graffiti that isn't cleaned, broken cobbles left unrepaired, street furniture that has seen better days, a lack of accessible parking that makes the city centre more difficult for disabled residents. I also heard examples of vandalism and shop break-ins not being meaningfully followed up, and here we come to one of the key responsibilities devolved to the SNP Scottish Government, that of policing. While frontline officers in Dunfermline and across Fife work incredibly hard, they're operating under sustained pressure from years of cuts, centralisation and underinvestment. Dunfermline, with its heritage of the past and potential future, has not received the kind of long-term planning and investment it deserves from the government at Holyrood, and that is true of wider investment in Scotland's towns and cities. What was striking at the event, however, was a sense of optimism. From places like Cafe Wine, Venino Music Store and Caledonian craft beer merchants, there was a clear pride in what Dunfermline has to offer. And while many of the policy levers for direct intervention in the future success of Dunfermline do lie at Holyrood, there are actions the UK Government could and should take as well. So I hope the UK Government will consider Dunfermline as pilot areas for trialling any kind of tax incentives that small businesses are calling for to support creation and innovation in town centres. And we need a shared vision between the UK Government, Scottish Government, Fife Council and local businesses to deliver that future. Dunfermline has talent, ambition and enormous potential, and with the right support across both of Scotland's governments and a clear, shared and deliverable vision, Dunfermline can become a leading example of how to build a safe, thriving and modern city centre in the 21st century. Thank you.
That's Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Can I also thank my honourable friend, the member for Derby South, for securing this very important debate. In my constituency of Birmingham Erdington, our local town centres are the beating heart of community life, whether it's Erdington High Street, Slade Road or King's Standing Shopping Precinct on the Hawthorne Road. These hubs are vital to our local economy, culture and sense of belonging. When I was first elected, Erdington High Street recorded some of the highest levels of crime in Birmingham. Working closely with West Midlands Police and our Police and Crime Commissioner, we secured £880,000 from the Proceeds of Crime Fund to launch Operation Fearless. Through that initiative, officers have made substantial arrests for violence, theft and drug offences, seized dangerous weapons and helped restore sense of safety and order to the High Street, showing that effective, sustained policing can make a real difference. I therefore urge the Minister to continue working closely with police forces, local authorities and community partners to support proven initiatives like Project Fearless, which demonstrates that sustained, community-focused policing can turn around our high streets, making them safe, welcoming and vibrant places at the heart of our community. Thank you.
Laura Kirk-Smith.
Much to offer and huge potential, but we're only going to fulfil that potential if people feel safe when they're in town. Our police do a really good job, as do wonderful organisations like the Street Angels, but we've got to be honest about the challenges, and I want to mention 3 briefly. First, the threats faced by our retail workers, which have been surging in recent years. I met with the assistant manager at one of the retailers at the shopping park in Aylesbury, and she showed me the harrowing footage from her body cam that she was wearing during a recent shoplifting incident. She kept remarkably calm and professional, but she was dealing with not just one, but a whole crowd of shoplifters who threatened her, surged the exit to the store and attacked her physically as well as verbally before making a dash for it. It's far from the only time that has happened recently, and no retail worker should ever have to deal with that. I really support the measures in the government's crime and policing bill, which I know will introduce a new standalone offence of assaulting a retail worker, but I'd like to hear more from the Minister about that. Second, I'd like to highlight the persistent antisocial behaviour that we see in town. I met with a group of representatives from our local pub watch group, and they described the antisocial behaviour that deters paying customers from coming into their premises. And I hear from women in particular who say that they don't feel safe walking down certain streets at night. Again, I know the Crime and Policing Bill has measures to address this, including by introducing the new respect orders, but I'd be grateful if the Minister could share more about plans to keep tackling that blight on our town centres. But third, I'd like to make the point about root causes, because while it's right that we tackle these threats to safety in town, we won't get far without looking at also what's behind these threats. I think we know that antisocial behaviour is often linked to drug and alcohol use, but it's also driven by lack of opportunities and lack of hope. So in my view, it's going to be measures like the government's youth strategy, which sets out a long-term plan to invest in safe spaces and opportunities for young people, which will ultimately reduce the incentives for people to get into the kinds of activities that make our town centre unsafe and give people that sense of hope and opportunity instead. I'd like to hear more from the Minister about that too. Thank you, Chair.
Preecha Pal. Or Preecha Apologies.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. under your chairship, and can I congratulate the Honourable Member for Derby South for securing this important debate. Huddersfield is my hometown and I'm so proud of it. Regeneration is on its way, including the investments in the Cultural Heart, the George Hotel, the Trans-Pennine route upgrade and the National Health Innovation Campus at Huddersfield University. And this is important because, like many towns across the north of England, Huddersfield has faced decades-long challenges from underinvestment in our communities and town centres. It's seen in the visible decline of our high streets, in the increase in vape shops and stores dealing in counterfeit items, many of which are propped up by organised criminal networks, and in the drop in visible policing and concerns with public safety. It's also seen in the feeling that institutions, agencies and governments have let our areas down, and in the lack of trust in us to deliver. On a recent visit to Kirklees College, one of the key concerns raised by students was safety and the perception of safety in the town centre. These concerns have been echoed in my meetings with town centre business owners, contacts with residents in my coffee mornings. I am proud to have stood on a manifesto which committed to supporting our town centres, and we are seeing that in the commitment in neighbourhood policing, which includes 12 additional officers in Huddersfield town centre. And of course, the Home Secretary announced plans to reform policing last week, including a police force to tackle serious crime and further restoring neighbourhood policing. These are all really important, but it would be really helpful if the Minister can set out how we will be tackling organised crime and county lines networks, and also the importance of violence reduction units in providing youth-focused prevention networks in Huddersfield. Can the Minister also give us an update on this? And more importantly, we need to ensure we continue to invest in young people. Investing in young people, increasing policing and levels of infrastructure are really important for our town centres. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Abbott, please.
Under your chairship today, and I thank the honourable member for Derby South for securing this important debate. This is something that comes up repeatedly with my local residents who want to feel safe in our town, whether that's walking, shopping, enjoying public spaces. Women and girls should feel safe at night. Families should be able to enjoy our town centre free from the fear of antisocial behaviour. And as has already been mentioned, shop workers shouldn't have the threat of retail crime hanging over them. And I'm really pleased, after years campaigning by the Cooperative Party, this was a standalone offence included in the Crime and Policing Bill. We have made real progress in Ipswich over the past couple of years with a combination of government initiatives working in partnership with our hard-working police force. Initiatives such as Clear Whole Build, for example, which has removed weapons and drugs from our streets, led to over 100 arrests with a number of charges and convictions totalling nearly 43 years. Other initiatives, for example, like Operation Spotlight over the summer, meant that over 1,700 extra hours, police spent 1,700 extra hours patrolling the town centre in July and August alone. So we know there's real progress. We've seen crime fall over the past few years by 13% as well. And I look forward to further legislation which will make it much easier for councils to bring back empty shops back into use, but also protects our high streets from unwanted businesses. And again, there's been real progress in tackling some of those. Can I just finish though, Chair, and say, although tackling crime is an absolute priority, we can't arrest our way out of the problems that we see on our high streets. That's why we're working really hard in Ipswich to bring good, well-paid, secure jobs, whether that's Sizewell C or Halo, which can be creating hundreds of them, or increasing our footfall in our town centre by attracting people in. We've seen a footfall increase by 15% over the coming years. So we're making progress. There's much more to do. So I thank the government and welcome the Minister's comments shortly.
Lizzie Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. It's a pleasure to serve here today under your chairship. I want my constituency of Morecambe and Lunesdale, where beauty surrounds and health abounds, to be a place where everyone feels safe on the high street. Now, there is still work to be done, but it's work that I'm very committed to working on alongside our local partners. And central to this, Mr Dowd, is the government's plan to put 13,000 additional police officers, PCSOs and special constables into neighbourhood roles by 2029. These officers will be embedded in our communities, building relationships, preventing crime and, of course, responding quickly when it does occur. Locally, there's some fantastic initiatives like Safer Morecambe, which brings together the police, the Business Improvement District, the local authority, Community Safety Partnership and my office. And through funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner, we're putting in place a street warden to help reassure residents further. And a key part of making our streets and town centres safe will be tackling this antisocial behaviour that people suffer, from vandalism to noise, drug use to harassment. These are the everyday issues that people really feel and really upsets people, quite rightly. And so to combat this, I know the Labour government are bringing in respect orders and local authorities are getting the powers for higher fines and to seize those damn bikes and get them off the road. We're also cracking down on shoplifting and violence against retail staff. It's horrendous that people are going to work and having to fear being assaulted. But it's not all doom and gloom, Mr Dowd. There's been some real successes in London under the Mayor, Sadiq Khan. Crime is at its lowest level since comparative records began. This shows that it can work. I'll happily give way.
Does she acknowledge that actually total crime figures are up over the last 15 years in London, from 87.1 crimes per 1,000 population in 2026 to 106.4 in 2025. So is she happy to correct the record that overall crime levels in London are up under Sadiq Khan?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. I very much welcome him in sending those statistics, which actually go against all the other evidence that I've seen, particularly on serious crime. Now, obviously, there are spikes in particular crimes, so phone theft has been a real problem in London, as it has been elsewhere, because they're now very high-value items. Online crime, as my honourable friend and I were talking about before, is becoming more prolific. People are being scammed, people are being defrauded. So the nature of crime has changed. I'm very welcome to look at all the evidence. All the evidence I've seen is that serious crime in London is going down, and that is a result of coordinated policing efforts and other public health measures, because in some respects, crime is a public health problem. Very good. So I'd like to finish, Mr Dowd, by just talking about visible policing, because I think this, backed by good community relations, street-level intelligence, can work. It reassures communities and it deters crime. And that's the approach we need in Morecambe and Lunesdale and across the country, that neighbourhood policing, targeted funding, practical local initiatives like Safer Morecambe are doing, together with that national action like that specific offence of assault on a retail worker, because we owe it to all our constituents and all our communities to make sure they feel safe in our town centres. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Margaret Mullane.
It's an honour to be here under your chairmanship.
and thank you to the Honourable Member for Derby South for this debate. Many of my constituents are in regular contact with me concerning the town centres and their local high streets regarding safety. At times, if criminals are allowed to prevail, law-abiding residents do feel unsafe, and it deters them from popping to their high street or the town centre at all, which adds to the deterioration of our high streets and town centres, and they've had 14 years of Tory austerity to help that along. Closed shops, rubbish piling up, and then over-concentration of vape shops, barbers and betting shops is hardly encouraging for our community to visit. High streets and town centre shops matter. We build relationships with our shops and our community spaces, but unless the police are given greater resource to tackle the shoplifting in places like Dagenham and Rainham, my residents will be put off visiting the shops. I indeed welcome the Pride in Place funding that Barking and Dagenham have got. I think what we need to focus on, and it's a big issue in my seat, is that when criminals feel they can get away with shoplifting, the crime escalates. Indeed, in an area in Elm Park, one of my shop workers was assaulted. When the criminals couldn't get what they wanted without paying, they ran into another shop, stole the cash and assaulted the shop worker. The human cost is terrible. This worker was traumatised. We all enjoy shopping online without a doubt, but equally we take joy popping out and visiting our local shops. Local authorities should have a think about local start-up businesses with short leases. Look at the areas where great things work and share best practice. The government will give councils the power to say no to businesses that do not enhance the area. I heard our Housing Minister, Steve Reid, yesterday give a sterling defence of our town centres and high streets on Sunday. I welcome the renewed focus from government and hope we start to see the investment much needed for our high streets to thrive again.
Michelle Welsh.
And thank you to my honourable friend for our Derby South for securing this date. Town and city centres are the beating hearts of our communities. They are places where people come together to meet friends, family and complete their daily tasks such as nipping to the post office or getting their weekly shop. It is a place that helps to combat loneliness, and at a time when society can feel so divisive, it shows that we have lots in common with each other. Places such as Dayer's Gift Shop and Spelton Rye and Caster's, local businesses representing the best of our times. Places such as Hucknall and Ollerton represent the very finest in Nottinghamshire. In my constituency, local businesses care about their community, but there is a dark side to our town and centres, making them feel unsafe to those they're also a lifeline to. Shoplifting, sadly, has become rampant in parts of my constituency, such as Hucknall, where sadly many local businesses have faced violent attacks from offenders which are often known to them and have targeted the same stores over and over again. What links much of this criminal activity is addiction, whether it be alcohol or drugs, or perhaps even both. Ashfield Police do an incredible job and are highly efficient, but sadly these criminals go back and back and back to these businesses once they're released. Without intervention from across government departments, the system would continue to allow offenders to repeat these attacks, all while harming businesses on our high streets and making residents feel safe. Health has such an important part to play. Years of local support has been absolutely decimated by the previous government, and it's left a gap in our communities and local businesses. Pride goes two ways. For too long, the previous Conservative government let Sherwood Forest down. Enough is enough. I'm proud that this government is investing in communities long neglected by the Tories. But tackling shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, early intervention, tackling root causes, and by improving infrastructure to suit the needs of communities, we can make town centres safer.
Thank you. Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr Dow, for your chairmanship and the member for Derby South for securing the debate today. You may have a purple flag, but certainly the feeling of security isn't spread across my community, and particularly there are areas of crime where we have great concern around bike theft, around shop theft, and I of course welcome as well the measures the government are taking in that area, but also around personal safety across our city. We've already heard about the challenges people face with substance misuse, and we've really got to drive that public health model to ensure that there are safe places people can go
to use and get the help and the public health support that they need, but also to go upstream and ensure that we're addressing the waves that we see around county lines, which of course come into our city of York and cause much disturbance as well as ensuring that we're getting those early interventions, a proper seamless approach to youth services in our city. I called 2 meetings. I'm happy to give way.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving that way on that point, and she's giving a great speech outlining the need for more youth services. In Darlington, I've called for the Council to embark on a PSPO, which would allow the police to remove balaclava-wearing people committing antisocial behaviour. We're seeing an escalation from young people who are trying to be the big men in the town and wearing balaclavas to hide their identity from the police. What's your view on that?
I thank the Honourable Member for the work that she's doing in Darlington, and clearly PSPOs can be used in a really powerful way for creating safer spaces in our city centre. I called together 2 meetings, one for the nighttime economy and one for the daytime economy in York, because they operate in very different ways, calling together all the agencies involved in that to look at where the strategies need to, first of all, coordinate and come together, but also the specifics within each. Coming to the fore was CCTV, ensuring that there's a proper strategy for CCTV, ensuring cameras were switched on, we're in the right places, we're of the right resolution as well, so that we can identify crime. And the agencies across our city I'm working with to ensure that we've got a proper protection around that. Also looking at how we ensure the coordination across the different agencies that work in our city is really important. But of course, the words that come to the fore so often is we need more bobbies on the beat. We need more police on our streets. And the funding formula for policing, talking to our Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime, highlights the real challenges that there are with areas such as North Yorkshire, which is a huge rural area where we have got those crime hotspots in our urban spaces. And I do ask the Minister to look at that again. Very briefly, I just want to talk on the Unite, and I declare my interest in that space. Their campaign of Get Me Home Safely, a really important campaign they brought to the fore. We need to ensure that our taxis are safer, and I want to ask the Minister what has happened since Casey's recommendation on changing the licensing regimes. We operate a safe licensing process in York. We want to ensure that we see that being brought into our city, so we've got the resources to control it and monitor it. And also, will she look at how we can protect our transport staff? I know the RMT have campaigned hard for that because it's so important. In closing, I just want to thank all the agencies which keep our city safe.
Thank you, Chair.
And may I start by saying it's a pleasure to speak in your chairmanship. Our town centres are the heart of our communities. They give our towns identity and define how we interact with where we live. But it's that very interaction that means that people also need to feel safe, secure and welcome. And that's certainly true in my constituency and hometown Gillingham, where the High Street has become a visible sign of decline. We are unfortunately plagued with antisocial behaviour, graffiti, drug activity, knife crime. Our brilliant local police officers, Marcus, Matt and Izzy, do a fantastic job invisibly patrolling our town centre, showing the very difference that community policing can make. But the fact remains that Gillingham Town Centre is in the top when it comes to top national decile when it comes to crime, and residents just don't feel safe. This is not something that's happened overnight, but comes after chronic underinvestment by the former Conservative Council and the damaging impacts of austerity by the former government, which left Gillingham forgotten. I know that my town centre is a reflection of how reduced civic investment has changed the character in its field. But despite this, I have hope for the future because there are opportunities for change. The announcement of Pride in Place by the government is a significant step in the right direction. Additionally, in partnership with Medway Council, I've established a task force which brings a multi-agency approach, working with police, local councillors and other stakeholders to address the challenges we face. Off the back of this, we have launched the Love Gillingham initiative, convening a community panel of residents, stakeholders and businesses who have the same passion and vision for their town centre. I would argue that it is this holistic community centre approach, which is also tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime, that is needed to work alongside national government interventions to truly ensure that our town centres are safer and more vibrant across the country.
Yeah. Got Arthur.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Look,
October last year, I ran a community meeting in partnership with Katrina Munro, who's Labour's candidate for Holyrood in the Edinburgh South Western constituency. And one of the key things that was brought up was the activities of food delivery companies. At the heart of this is what some would call a precarious business model based on precarious work, a business model based on precarious work, which essentially exploits these workers, encourages them to drive illegal e-bikes in quite a reckless manner. In November, the police outside my constituency office managed to impound 13 of these bikes. Just imagine what they could do if they were fully funded.
Would the honourable member give way on that
Very
point?
happy to, very happy to.
The honourable member is giving way. Thank you, for the honourable member, for giving way. You're making a really eloquent point about the funding given to police around eradicating the crime of these e-bikes. Does the honourable member agree with me that if we had more bobbies on bikes, we would be in a better position, and maybe the Minister might like to include that in her summing up?
Absolutely, but of course in Scotland...
We don't have very much long to go, and I want to get members in. I want the opportunity for the ministers and the opposition spokesperson. So I'm not saying you don't add interventions, but I'll end up cutting somebody out of the debate if that happens. Scott off.
Thank you. I really appreciate that guidance, Mr Dow. Absolutely, we need more police, but unfortunately Scotland last year, their budget was cut, which makes their job even harder. So I've recently written to Deliveroo, Uber Eats and Just Eat, and these are companies which track every movement of these riders, and they say despite knowing where they are all the time, they can't use the app to track their speeds and whether or not they're riding recklessly. Unless I know the order number that has been delivered, which I find absolutely incredible. I have, Mr Dowd, however, been offered a place on the Deliveroo rider training course. I'd be interested to see what that comprises. So it's really disappointing that these companies aren't taking more ownership of the problem. So I did approach the Minister for Road Safety on this, and she's confirmed that the government will be launching a national work-related road safety charter, and I really hope the food delivery companies engage in that constructively. But I really do have my doubts that it's going to change matters on the ground, because the fundamental to the business model of these companies is recklessness and exploitation of these workers, and that's what needs to be addressed. So I really hope if these companies don't step up, that the government will legislate. And I also agree with the comments that were made earlier, that the government must take seriously the powers it has to manage the import and sale of these illegal bikes. I find it absolutely incredible that people can buy these bikes, where in most of our constituencies, there's nowhere they can ride them. And I hope that point can be addressed by the Minister as well. Thank you, Mr Dowd.
Jodie Gosling.
Thank you, Mr Dowd, and thank you to my for securing this debate. Nuneaton Town Centre, like many of our town centres, used to be a source of pride. Our vibrant markets stretching all the way through town, down Queen's Road, through Market Square and back down Abbey Street. Every shop full, bustling with shoppers. And over the past decade, again, like many of our town centres, it has taken a hammering and suffered significant decline. Shops boarded up and the markets reduced to an echo of their former selves. Crime, shoplifting, serious organised crime, drugs and social behaviour become commonplace. A few years ago, my teenager, like many parents' teenagers, in town on a Saturday, and a Facebook post pops up showing police and cordons around the town centre and a flippant comment, "Nunny got a bit stabby." This culminated in the tragic and fatal stabbing of one of our local lads, a gentle giant, Tom Ellis, in June 2024. Since my election, I have been driven to change the future of Nuneaton Town Centre, and alongside the ambitious Labour Council, we are progressing rapidly with transformation work. The market is growing back, and in March, our transformation project, Grayson Place, will be completed. We are awaiting the opening of food halls, college campuses in our town centre, event spaces, and the first championship paddle centre. I have made it my priority to meet with senior officers from our local safer neighbourhoods, walk the town, talk to businesses, market store traders and shoppers. And I welcome the return of our designated town centre officer. I also welcome the investment of £1.5 million from this government in Pride in Place Impact Fund for our town centres, alongside £1.4 million in the Neighbourhood Fund. It is working together with organisations like the police, the BID, our town centre wardens, our brilliant councillors like Councillor Nikki King, in order to coordinate the approach and rescue our town centres.
Thank you, Mr. Dowers. Speak under your chairmanship.
Crime and antisocial behaviour has been a priority in my Bournemouth West constituency since my election. Countless residents have told me they feel unsafe. And Bournemouth faces seasonal pressures where millions of people visit our beaches and parks during the summer. But last year we had a slew of negative headlines about chaos, decline and lawlessness. But if you look at the crime statistics, they tell a completely different picture. Bournemouth is consistently in the top 20, if not top 10 safest cities or large towns in my case. Yes, serious incidents occurs, but they're trending downwards. Shoplifting is rife. I don't want to minimise this or people's experience of it, but in my limited time, I want to understand why fear feels so real for so many people when crime is relatively low. I recently met a resident who told me he doesn't let his 12 and 14-year-old daughters go out after 3 or 4 p.m. in Bournemouth. Yet when they went up to Regent Street, he let them wander around, go off shopping on their own. Now, crime rates in Bournemouth are 16% lower than the national average. They're 130% higher in Westminster. That area has 8% of London's crime. I don't say this to minimise or denigrate Westminster, but safety isn't only about where the crime happens, it's also about whether the shops are filled, the streets are busy, they're clean, they're looked after. It's about confidence and pride, about feeling reassured and protected. Since my election, I've been relentlessly focused on funding for our police. £1 million hotspot policing over the summer, 40 new offers for Dorset Police. And Minister, it's why I relentlessly bang on about the funding formula. Our safety was also a key theme of our Bournemouth Town Centre Citizens panel. And the panel called for 4 things: a coordinated women's safety initiative, improved coordination about positive safety initiatives, awareness of CCTV effectiveness, and a lighting audit to highlight low and high lighting areas in the town. And these sit alongside actions designed to improve the public realm, spur regeneration, fill our streets and restore civic pride. And I will certainly be playing my part in all of these.
Thank you. Phil Brickell.
Serve under your chairmanship. Can I start by thanking West Horton South Councillor John McHugh for his campaigning for measures to tackle antisocial behaviour in West Horton and give residents and firms the confidence they need to go about their business. John has worked extensively with me and with Greater Manchester Police, and many of his efforts are not publicly commended. They should be. Now, our town centres are the hearts of our communities, which is why I welcome the government's new Pride in Place funding for Bolton West. But regeneration, whether in Bolton or Blackrod, Horwich or West Horton, will only succeed if we resolutely confront one of the biggest threats to our town centres, high street economic crime. In towns across this country, cash-intensive businesses are being used to launder criminal money, evade tax and undercut legitimate traders. These acts are not victimless, they're predatory. They enable organised crime and drug dealing, they drain the public finances and they drive honest businesses out. And that's why the government's Safer Streets mission must include tackling economic crime, because if there's one thing I know, after tackling bribery and corruption for more than a decade myself, if we want safer streets, we must follow the money. And it's not just an issue of putting more police officers on the streets. Now, having met with officers from Greater Manchester Police's Economic Crime Unit, it's clear to me that any lasting efforts to address and increase safety in our towns must also rely on provision for specialist financial investigators within the police to go after the same criminal actors who feed off our high streets, carrying out their business in plain sight. So I welcome the government's decision in the latest budget to establish a high street criminality task force. But for it to work, high street economic crime must be treated as a systemic national threat with regeneration funding aligned to enforcement. That has to include stronger licensing and registration in high-risk sectors, tougher action against Phoenix companies and against serial non-payment of tax and business rates. And we can look to what the Dutch have done with their Bibbo Act, which has set the way about tackling high street money laundering and been very effective over the years. We also need to see far better data sharing between different trading standards teams, HMRC, Companies House, the police and local authorities.
Thank
you, Mr. Dowd. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'm going to make 2 brief points, 1 per minute. The first is around the how Rugby Town Centre, the police officers there, the community wardens, the bid rangers all work together to ensure that Rugby Town Centre is safe, and I wonder whether the Minister could have a look at whether Borough Council or District Council run community wardens can play a really powerful role in defeating antisocial behaviour and criminality at the sub-policing level. The second point I want to make is regarding children and young people and when they carry out antisocial behaviour and criminality in our town centres. Recently there was a case in Rugby where the police have made several arrests of young people for antisocial behaviour and criminality. And I'm aware that those officers made every effort possible to work across the agencies, to work collaboratively, to do everything they possibly could to avoid going down the criminal route with arrests and so forth. However, in some circumstances, sadly, it is necessary to make arrests, particularly when members of the public, visitors, businesses and others are very badly affected. So I wonder whether the Minister could set out her thoughts on the government's approach to antisocial behaviour and criminality among young people, particularly given that in the Crime and Policing Bill, or Act I should say, the respect orders only apply to people above the age of 16. And that could potentially leave somewhat of a gap regarding the provision of powers available to police and others in this regard. And we need to make sure that there is no lawlessness on our streets. And irrespective of the age of the perpetrator, we do everything we can to avoid arrests, but we must make sure the police have the powers they need. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the final person to speak. Can I just ask the front bench to bear with me and with their forbearance? I wanted to get all the members in, given the importance and the interest that's shown in the debate. So just bear that in mind in their responses. I'd be very grateful. Can I call upon Luke Taylor, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Dowd, and I thank the Honourable Member for Derby South for calling this very important debate. You cannot truly be free to live your life if you're living in fear of crime. Across London and in boroughs like mine in Sutton, that freedom begins and ends with residents feeling safe to use their own town centres and their high streets. It's where people come together, it's where they shop, and this day and age it's one of the last truly public spaces left. But when our constituents can't see police on their high streets, they don't feel protected and are left feeling powerless. Their sense of security slips and it changes how people live their daily lives. High street footfall drops, shops close earlier, parents worry, and women are forced to plan their routes home with keys clenched in their fists. Londoners should be able to feel safe in their everyday routines without their safety being threatened by an illegal e-bike tearing across the pavement, without the fear of their phone being snatched from their hand, or even just being forced to put up with antisocial, disrespectful behaviour. Now, let me be clear. No matter what certain right-wing politicians say, unfortunately they're absent, London is largely a safe city. Serious crime figures in the capital are falling, and this must be celebrated. Murder rates are at their lowest level in London since 2014, and violent crime in the city was down by 12% compared to 2024, but up by around 30% in 10 years. Improving figures for the most serious crime contrast with an increase in more visible crimes like shoplifting, up 19% in London this year. The same is tragically true on sexual assaults, up by more than 10,000 in a decade, from 16,100 in 2016 to 26,800 in 2025. All crime reporting in London is up from 87.1 per thousand in 2016 to 106.4 in 2025, all under Mayor Khan's watch and under government funding deals decided by Conservative ministers. These are sobering reminders that the crimes that make life miserable, or even in the case of sexual assault, terrifying, are up despite the positive headlines. And the lived experience of my constituents tells a far more uncomfortable story than the picture the Mayor and the government want to paint. In particular, it is particularly heartbreaking that women and girls who have faced too often underreported violence on our streets for decades and who've hoped that as society finally begins to shine the spotlight on gendered violence, visible and proactive policing would finally rise to meet the challenge. Instead, they're having to bear witness to the erosion of that kind of policing instead. Between 2015 and 2025, the number of Metropolitan Police officers has stayed almost static at around 32,000 full-time equivalents. As our city has become more complex, new crimes and new dangers have developed, and our population has grown by more than 500,000 people, the Metropolitan Police has not. Indeed, just last year, under Sadiq Khan's leadership and a Labour government, the Metropolitan Police lost more than 1,400 officers and staff, a cut of over 4%. I expect the Minister will talk about decisions made by some of my predecessors up to 16 years ago as a reason for Labour failure to properly fund the Met this year, but the responsibility sits squarely on Labour government and Labour Mayor's shoulders. For Londoners, those cuts are a kick in the teeth. Police officers should not feel like some sort of novelty. You should be able to spot one on the street and not think it's unusual.
Will they give me on this point?
Absolutely.
Does he not agree that if we're serious about making London safer, and we all want to be safer, we all spend a lot of time here, that supporting the use of facial recognition to identify known criminals would make a difference? But his party opposes that.
I genuinely thank him for his contribution. He must have read my next paragraph. CCTV cameras and facial recognition tech watching and monitoring us going about our business cannot replace a friendly face with a welcoming smile and advice on getting assistance for a lost phone or mislaid keys. I fear that as funding for the Metropolitan Police continues to be stretched thinner and thinner, this reassurance will begin to all but disappear. Having walked the streets of Sutton with my local police unit, I've seen first-hand the strain caused by falling officer numbers. My High Street team cut from 11 to 4. They're doing extraordinary work, but they're being asked to cover more ground and respond to more incidents with fewer colleagues by their side. Sometimes I fear there's a dangerous strain of make-believe in this debate, the belief that police capacity can grow without the financial backing to support it. No one has been clearer about this than the Metropolitan Police Commander, Sir Mark Rowley. Last year, he warned of severe consequences as the Met faced a £260 million funding gap. Even after emergency support reduced a much larger deficit, the pressures have not gone away, and policing capability in the capital continues to be eroded as we speak. Within the Met, specialist teams such as the Flying Squad, firearms teams, the Royals Park Police are all set to be cut. And all that's to say nothing of the school liaison officers, who do some of the most important work in restoring and embedding trust in the police in the next generation, as well as stopping the dangerous spread of youth violence at its root. These are units that form the backbone of serious crime prevention in our capital. But in recent weeks, we've been told that structural reforms will save the day. Proposals for mergers to create mega forces, which apparently will do more for less. Police reform without proper funding isn't fixing the problem, it's at best delaying it, and at worst, putting greater pressure on the cracks that are already showing. These changes set out by the Police Reform White Paper must be done right. So I want to press the Minister for clarity on what these reforms will mean, particularly for the Metropolitan Police. At a time when visible policing is so hard to achieve, you'd expect priority to be given to those last vestiges of accessible law enforcement, police front counters. But no, having already lost police officers and stations, and with a £260 million shortfall to plug, Londoners are now being asked to stomach the closure of counters across the city, leaving most of London a police access desert. These 12 complete closures and the loss of 24-hour counters in 25 other locations touch every part of London. A 24/7 counter in every borough gone. Another broken promise from Mayor Khan. When those counters close, people lose the sense that police officers are present and accessible in their community. We can all see that. We can all agree on that. So it beggars belief that just last week, both Labour and Green Assembly members voted against Lib Dem proposals for a funded moratorium on these closures. How can they expect Londoners to put their trust in them if they won't back us on this most basic of campaigns? The Liberal Democrats across London are calling not just for this to be stopped, but also for more properly funded police front desks in every community, based in local hubs such as libraries, shopping centres and town halls. This would allow people to report crimes and share information with the police face-to-face in convenient locations. So, to conclude, I simply ask the Minister this. When can our police forces expect to see the investment they deserve? What assessment are they making on an ongoing basis of the impact of below-inflation funding increases on the viability of community policing? And why, when they claim to want to restore community policing, will they not intervene when their own party's mayor is driving policing in the opposite direction in the capital? Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Vickers.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Dowd, and I thank the honourable member for Derby South for bringing forward this important debate today. Town and city centres are the lifeblood of our local communities. They're crucial for people, for local businesses and for our economy. And yet, under this Labour government, it increasingly feels as though our town and city centres are not being supported, but attacked. Attacked by a jobs tax that raises the cost of employing people, attacked by surging business rates that punish employers and enterprise, and attacked by relentless pressure on pubs and small businesses, the very places that make our high streets sociable, welcoming and safe. The result is plain to see. Businesses are closing, and when businesses are closing, confidence drains away. Because thriving town centres are not just about economics, they're about safety. Communities with busy, successful high streets are more likely to report crime, more likely to look out for one another, and more likely to defend what they value. That brings me to Stockton. Stockton has a great high street and incredible local businesses, and I always encourage people to support it, but I'd be negligent in my duty if I did not acknowledge the challenges it faces, challenges that did not arrive overnight. Over decades, Stockton's Labour Council has allowed the town centre to decline and to become home to unacceptable levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. When disorder grew, enforcement weakened. When problems became visible, excuses multiplied. The council's priorities tell their own story. Instead of employing more civic enforcement officers or street wardens, the people who provide visible reassurance, the council has expanded layers of management on six-figure salaries. It's recently emerged that Stockton Council spent £15.8 million on recruitment consultants in just 3 years. Money that could have gone into keeping the town centre safe was instead swallowed up by consultants and questionable spending decisions. Councils have a duty to spend public money wisely, and in Stockton, that duty has too often become neglected. At the same time, instead of using all powers available through public space protection orders to clamp down on antisocial behaviour, the council's soft approach has allowed far too much of it to go unchallenged. Worse still, Stockton's Labour Council volunteered itself as an asylum dispersal authority, taking on a completely disproportionate number of asylum seekers. For many years, Stockton has had one of the highest asylum seeker to resident ratios in the entire country. Those asylum seekers are largely housed near the town centre, placing pressure on accommodation, public services and integration, and leaving large numbers of lone men congregating in the town centre, causing understandable concern for residents and businesses alike. That situation has been compounded by the council's permissive approach to housing, allowing large numbers of houses in multiple occupation, bedsits and bail accommodation to cluster around the town centre. And the result is predictable. People stop visiting, businesses close, crime goes unreported. It creates a doom loop, and Labour councils across the country have perfected it. What we're now seeing nationally is Stockton scaled up. Since this Labour government came to power, there are 1,318 fewer police officers on our street and more than 3,000 fewer people working in policing overall. That's not an accident, it's a choice. Police chiefs warn of a funding shortfall of £500 million. In my own local force, the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner says there's a £2.4 million gap, the equivalent of 40 police officers. And even when offenders are caught, punishment is increasingly optional. Labour's early release policies mean criminals are back on the streets sooner, sometimes within weeks. So shopkeepers see the same faces returning, residents see the same behaviour repeated, and police officers see their work unravelled by decisions taken far from their communities. The consequences are clear. Shoplifting is rising. Robbery of business property has surged. The government tells us crime is underreported, And if that is true, it only strengthens the case for more police, not fewer. The government points to measures in the Crime and Policing Bill, but targets mean little if officer numbers are falling. Warm words do not patrol streets. Conservatives believe safety is not a luxury. It's a foundation on which everything else depends. That's why we back our police. That's why we're committed to recruiting 10,000 more officers. And that's why we support visible, proactive policing in the places that need it most. So before the Minister tells us once again that a strategy is in place, may I ask her a very simple question? Will she commit today that no police force will lose yet more officers as a result of this government's next spending review? Or should communities prepare for even fewer police on the streets? And that leads to a second unavoidable question. How does she expect communities to feel safer when there are fewer police, criminals are released early, and Labour councils refuse to use the powers they already have to tackle antisocial behaviour? Or is managed decline now official government policy? Mr Chairman, fewer police, early release and unenforced laws are not unfortunate side effects. They're policy choices, and our town centres are paying the price. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Dowd. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I thank my honourable friend, the member for Derby South, for his brilliant speech. I, for one, want to visit and go to the Hairy Dog, apart from anything else, and see all the wonderful things that is happening in his patch. And I thank him for telling the story of his very strong community and its resilience in the face of the challenges that we all want to see overcome. I also want to, if you will forgive me, Mr Dowd, speak in praise of the members of Parliament who are here today representing their constituents. All of us are reading with increasing fury the behaviours of the former ambassador to the United States, and it is these MPs here who represent the very best of what politics is about. We are in this job because we want to make our streets safer, our communities better, and bring pride to the people that we represent. And that is what the members of Parliament are doing here today. And those snake oil salesmen who go on the television and tell us we are a crime-ridden nation, like the members from the Party of Reform, they do not come to these places and these debates and actually have these discussions. And I am afraid that they do not have the answers. It is the MPs who are here today who are speaking up for their constituents, demanding answers, demanding better, demanding more, who bring out the best in what politics is for and what we're all in this business for. I also want to briefly speak in praise of our police. I went very recently to meet the first responders from the Huntingdon attack. Such bravery is quite extraordinary, and we ask this of our police every day, and they go out and face danger, and we should always thank them. On the speeches from the opposition spokespeople, who seem to forget that they are representing their party and the nation, who spoke mostly about Sutton and Stockport rather than their actual national policies, what I would say to them is to think about what their parties have done in previous years. I will take no lessons whatsoever from the Conservative Party, who slashed 20,000 police and then in their rush to bring them back, put them behind desks. And we now have 250 officers, for example, working in HR, warranted police officers around the country who are working in HR. We will put police back where they belong on our streets. And can I give honourable members a couple of good updates before I tackle some of the challenges that, of course, we must overcome? The first is that we had our knife crime statistics out last week. Knife crime since this government came to power is down 8%. We have taken 60,000 knives off the street. Knife murders are down 27%, and hospital admissions are down 11%. We will not shy away in this government from doing everything we can to tackle serious violence and knife crime. Violence is not inevitable, and we will not accept it, and we will keep bearing down on it. And I thank all of those who have taken and played their part to tackle that epidemic. But we know that it is the epidemic, as so many members have very eloquently said, it is the epidemic of everyday crime in our communities that drives that sense of lack of safety. And I can tell honourable members in this House that there are 2,400 more officers in our neighbourhoods now, as of this minute, than there were when we came to power. There will be 3,000 more by March, and there will be 13,000 more by the end of this Parliament. It is officers in our neighbourhoods tackling crime, being able to do the things that we ask them to do, not burdened by bureaucracy that we will also take away through new technology in our police reforms. Those are the things that our communities are calling out for, and those officers and PCSOs are the people who will help us tackle these epidemic of everyday crime. Honourable members mentioned so many issues and asked me to respond on so many issues that I sadly don't have time to do. It would be remiss of me not to point out to the member for Bromley that London by March will have 420 extra neighbourhood officers on our streets, and London has received a £180 million increase in its budget this year. I want to touch briefly on retail crime, which many members have talked about. We are making changes in the police bill which will help in this space. There is also, and we've seen this through the big summer of action we did and the winter of action that we've also just completed, where there is good working between the retailers and our police and our charitable organisations helping with, for example, drug addiction, which is a driver of retail crime. We have seen real results. In my own area, we've seen a very substantial reduction in retail crime from that persistent offender approach, where we go after those people. 80% of retail crime is committed by 20% of offenders. Most of them have a drug addiction of some kind. We have to join the dots and make sure we're giving people the treatment that they need, as well as that they are facing up to the crimes that they have committed. Some members talked about organised crime. Violence reduction units were mentioned. Proud to say we are funding violence reduction units this year, working to increase their effectiveness, and they do an absolutely brilliant job. And of course we have to tackle the issues that lie behind the crime and not just the crime itself. Members talked about what was happening in their own constituencies, the street wardens. In Morecambe, I think street wardens is a very interesting model, and I think we've seen that over the winter. My honourable friend in York talked about taxi licensing. I've seen some really good work with taxi marshals who are helping to identify who those unlicensed taxi drivers are, and also working to protect and support women and young girls who, when they're out in our community, do not feel as safe as we want them to. The member for Bolton West talked about economic crime, which we've talked about previously. He's absolutely right, and many members talked about this sort of increasing in vape shops or other shops that we know are actually laundering money, and I know that the police are dealing with this. I've been on a raid with the police myself to tackle this, but he is right to say that more needs to be done. I haven't, Mr Dowd, looked once at my actual speech, so you'll forgive me. There are many things that this government is doing that is designed to crack down on crime, but I just want to end, because I need to let my honourable friend, the member for Derby South, speak. I had the honour of meeting the family of Danny, who was murdered in his constituency. He wanted the family to meet with me, and I did, and we all know in our own constituencies the horror that crime can cause, whether that's everyday crime or whether it's the most horrific crime. And this government will not rest until we have tackled the issues that our constituents put us here to tackle, and I just thank everybody here today for taking part in this debate.
Baggy Shanker to wind up.
Thank you, Chair, and it's great to speak under your chairship again. Can I thank all members for their contributions and their interventions in this debate? Can I just remind the Lib Dem spokesperson that the UK extends beyond the London boundaries, and can I just to remind the Shadow Minister that this debate was about town and city centre safety. Maybe he picked the wrong notes up before he came here. I think collectively we've managed to highlight the serious issues and what our residents want ministers to hear from across the UK. And can I just put on record my thanks to the Minister for meeting the family of Govinda Singh Johal as she did recently, and can I thank her for her reassurances that this government has already increased policing numbers by 2,400, and I look forward to getting that number to 13,000, like she says, during this Parliament.
Thank you for your forbearance, everybody. Everyone got in, and the front benches for their truncated responses, perhaps slightly truncated. The question is that this House has considered town and city centre safety. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. Thank you.